Hey guys, quick video today. I'm showing off a roll of film that I shot a couple months ago. Now, backstory is about 100 kilometers from where I live, there's a wind farm on the side of the highway, and driving past it at night, it's kind of an ominous scene. You've got these huge windmills, and they've got a flashing red beacon on the top, so it kind of illuminates them. They kind of appear out of nowhere, and I was thinking I could go shoot that. I had some ideas in mind. Anyways, I guess one night I was feeling inspired, so I loaded up my kit and packed up the motorbike and headed out there around 11 p.m. Now, this is my video camera sensor jacked all the way up to try to show you a bit of the scene. But keep in mind it was pitch black when I got out there, so this is a lot more than I could see. Pretty much the only things I could see was the kind of distant lights of a nearby town and the blinking red beacons on top of the windmills. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit of a creepy vibe being all alone out there. Occasionally I'd see headlights in the distance and kind of wonder if I was due for a late night confrontation with a local farmer. I was initially hoping to get some really cool star trails with the windmills in the foreground appearing as like red propellers, but when I got out there I realized it must have been overcast because it was pitch black, and yeah, I couldn't see a single star in the sky. In fact, at one point it even started raining, and I thought about packing it in, but after a few minutes it let up, and I was committed to at least shooting something. Okay, so my actual plan for shooting the exposures was to use CineStill 800T. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, but it's a high-speed film that is tungsten balanced. It would just work well for it. Also, was going to use a cable release, which is locking cable release. You don't have to hold it down. You can actually twist this and it will lock in position, so you can leave it holding the camera shutter open to get really nice long exposures, and then just unlock it when you're ready for the exposure to be complete. And the camera itself, I was going to shoot with this guy, my Hasselblad 500 CM, which is just a real workhorse. I've got a prism on the top. A lot of people use a waist level finder, but I find it's a bit maybe easier to compose, especially at night with the prism. Now, I know based on experience that in the middle of the night, a 10 to 20 minute exposure at around f4 or 5.6 is going to give me some decent star trails. And I figured that the red light on top of the windmill would be maybe a bit overexposed, but cast an interesting red glow over the structure. So that was my initial plan, and I kind of stuck to those exposure times. So for the actual process, it went a little something like this. I'd set up my camera on a tripod, have the cable release in there. I would compose the shot, make sure it was set to bulb mode, and make sure the cable release was in locking mode. When I have everything ready to go, I'd fire the shot, and that locks the shutter open. I'd walk back to my motorbike and set a 10-20 minute timer. When the timer went off, I'd walk back to the camera and carefully release the shutter, or rather end the exposure, and advance to the next frame and do it all again. Funny enough, during one of these long exposures, I actually lost track of where the camera was, and knowing that the shutter was open, I couldn't exactly take out my cell phone and shine my light around looking for it without ruining the exposure. So I eventually found it. I was worried I was going to bump into it and knock it over, but I eventually found it and was able to end the exposure. But after that, I made a point of pacing how many steps to where I set up the camera from the motorbike, and then kind of use the motorbike as a home base until it started getting brighter around 3 a.m. When I went out to shoot, I didn't actually expect to shoot the whole roll or spend more than a few hours out there. I just had this kind of idea of what I wanted to shoot and was going to head out there, do it, and head back. But I was feeling good and I was excited to be out there shooting, so I just committed to finishing the roll. And with exposures between 5 and 20 minutes and 12 shots in a roll, you can see how that added up. And I eventually made my way back around sunrise. Alright, so after getting home and catching some sleep, I got up and developed the roll with the Liquid C41 kit. Now, with every roll of film I process, I like to inspect it when I hang it to dry. It's probably the most exciting part of the whole process is that first look at the film. Though with negatives, you can't quite appreciate the photos like you can with positives. However, you get a pretty good idea of how the exposure was and the compositional elements too. I noticed a few frames did actually have some star trails, and the overall exposure seemed okay. Once the negatives were dry, I scanned them with an Epson V800 using Silverfast. So let's have a look what I got. So the first shots didn't turn out all that great. The really dark scene and the overcast sky didn't offer much interesting detail, and disappointingly the red beacon didn't actually do much to illuminate those long windmill blades. I was hoping for these big cool red circles, but it ended up being just a somewhat small point of light. In fact, you can't even tell it's a windmill. Though, as it got closer to sunset, I think the images started getting better. Unfortunately, the windmill blades still weren't that apparent though. What's happening is that because the windmill blades are relatively dark, and there's light behind them that's revealed as the blades move, this backlighting kind of overwrites or erases the dark blades. You can see there's visually darker areas where the blades block the light as they rotated, but it's not really the significant effect I was hoping for. To keep it simple when doing long exposures, or even double exposures for that matter, is to remember that light eats darkness. This here is probably my favorite shot of the bunch. It's nicely framed, it's got solid foreground detail, the background is pleasing with the blurred clouds, and the red light here did actually illuminate the blades in a way that gives good visual interest. It wasn't the big red circle I was expecting, but it works well. And here's the last shot of the roll, with it almost looking like it was shot during daytime. It's interesting, but nothing special. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned a thing or two, or found it entertaining. Anyways, let me know what you think. Thanks again. Take care.